All right, what if I told you that just one number could pull a multi-billion-dollar industry back from the brink? It sounds pretty dramatic, right? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today, the incredible story of India's seafood turnaround. We're talking high-stakes trade, fierce competition, and a comeback that, honestly, almost nobody saw coming.
And this is the number that changed it all. Yep, you're seeing that right. A drop from a huge 50% tariff all the way down to 18%. Now, on the surface, okay, it's just a tariff cut. But for India's seafood industry, this was an absolute lifeline. So what's really going on behind this massive shift?
So here's the deal. It all boils down to a game-changing tariff cut in a multi-billion-dollar trade deal with the US. And look, this wasn't just some small policy tweak. No way. This was a seismic shift for the whole industry. But to really get why this was such a big deal, we've got to go back and look at the crisis that made it so incredibly necessary in the first place.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit. Because, to really appreciate the comeback, you've got to understand just how bad things were. And to put it simply, India's seafood industry was in some serious trouble.
First things first, you have to understand just how important the US market is. I mean, it's not just a market for Indian seafood, it is the market. We're talking about 36% of all their seafood exports. That slice of the pie is worth a whopping $2.68 billion. So yeah, when things go wrong in the US, it's not just a little problem, it's a full-blown crisis. And a crisis is exactly what we saw. Because of these crippling tariffs, exports to the US just plummeted. We're talking a 70% drop. Think about that for a second. That multi-billion-dollar market we just talked about, it was basically evaporating, and it was happening fast. So the big question is, what was causing this massive collapse? Well, here's the heart of the problem, right here. It was all about price. India was getting absolutely crushed. I mean, with a tariff somewhere around 50%, there's just no way you can compete with your main rival, Ecuador, who was only paying a 19% tariff. So what happened? Ecuador was pretty much eating their lunch in India's single most important market. But then, right when things looked their worst, everything changed. A single deal, that one number we talked about, sparked what we're calling the Great Indian Comeback. And there it is, 18%. Just like that, boom, India's right back in the game. And they're not just competitive again. Think about it, at 18%, they now have a slight edge over Ecuador's 19%. This one little change sent a jolt of pure energy through the entire industry. So how did the financial markets react to this news? Well, to put it mildly, explosively. I mean, just look at these numbers. Avanti feeds shot up by 73%. Apex frozen foods jumped 49%. Now, for perspective, the broader market index, the Nifty 50, only grew by about 3% in that same time. So this wasn't just a little bit of optimism. This was a huge vote of confidence from investors who knew exactly what this meant. Winning again in the biggest market was going to lead to a massive surge in profits. And this isn't just a bunch of speculative hype either. This really shows you why investors got so excited. For the big players like Avanti and Apex, the US and European markets, they're not just important, they are everything. So a comeback in the US directly translates to a real, tangible, massive boost to their revenue and, of course, their bottom line.
Okay, so the comeback is officially on, and the market is clearly celebrating. But, the story doesn't end here. So what happens next? Let's take a look at the big opportunities and the potential warnings on the horizon.
And the good news might just keep on coming, because on the horizon, there's a potential free trade agreement with the European Union. Now, if India can manage to get zero-duty access there, it would create what you might call a double-win situation. They'd lock in amazing terms in two of their absolute biggest markets. This wouldn't just be another win. It could secure their spot on the global stage for years.
But, okay, it's not all smooth sailing from here. Our source material from Grow makes a really important point. Investors need to be careful here. This turnaround is super exciting, for sure, but the real test is whether it's actually sustainable. International trade can be incredibly volatile. New competitors could pop up, or these great new tariff rates could change down the line. The long-term picture is definitely still coming into focus.
And really, that brings us to the big question that's hanging over this whole story. We've seen this incredible, dramatic turnaround, a rescue from the absolute brink. The industry is back on its feet, it's competitive, and the future looks pretty bright. But in the crazy world of global trade, the biggest question is always the same one. How long will it last?